Hey everybody, welcome to my channel, and welcome to part 0 of what if Deku was a Nomu or an amalgamate. And if you don't know what amalgamate is, it's pretty much a mix of it's pretty much like a Nomu, but more fucked up looking. So we start off when Deku was created, not born, created. All for One's looking at this test tube, and there's a little child in it, and he says, "This must be your newest creation, Doctor. What is it?" The Doctor looks at All for One and says, This is D3K4. Amalgamate 1, or known as Deku. All for One asks, why did you choose the name Deku? There could have been a bunch of other names for it. The Doctor looked at him and said, well, if this one proves to be useless, then you'll know why. Actually no, if it proves to be useless, then you can just take its quirks, can't you? Just leave it for dead. All for One says, I guess you're right. Well, let's wait and see what happens. A few days later, Deku's about the size of a 4-year-old, and he's let out of the chamber. Deku's on the floor covered in this liquid, and the tubes covered him. As he opens his eyes and starts coughing, the Doctor walks over to him and says, welcome, D3K4, to your new home. As he looks up and says, are you my creator? And tilts his head as he says that. The Doctor looks at him and says, I guess you could say that. Now look at your master, and go to him so you can get your powers. As Deku gets up on his feet, stumbling and wobbling, crashing into just random items falling on the floor, as he's just standing there in front of All for One. As All for One puts his hand over his head and gives him these abilities, which you guys can decide too, but these are the main abilities I want to give him. Regeneration. And I'm going to combine these two, shock absorption and dispersion. So that's one quirk. And the other one is weapon formation. That essentially means he's able to turn his hands, and he's able to turn his hands, arms, and other parts of his body. He's also able to create weapons on his body and use them. So he can turn his hand into a sword or an axe, like if you've seen the Venom movie in Riot, where he turns his hand into like an axe or something. Yeah, Deku's able to do that. As the drawback to these is Deku loses his mouth, but what happens is whenever he goes to open his mouth, it opens, but it's goo-like, and just this line forms across his face, and it opens. There's just parts of skin and just a goopy-like substance goes up and down his mouth, as his teeth are pure white and they're sharp like daggers. All for One and the Doctor look at this in disgust, and they're like, so that's the drawback of those three, huh? All for One says, it must be. Well, I guess he can now be formally known as an amalgamate, now can't he? Deku looks at All for One and just tilts his head. He can't use his mouth right now. So as soon as he closes it, it just closes up and the line for his mouth is gone, and it just disappears. All for One says, okay, D3K4, nod or shake your head for these questions. Do you need to eat? Deku shakes his head no. Then All for One asks, who is your, or no, will you ever betray me? Deku shakes his head no. All for One laughs and says, good, this one's perfect. Now, take him to the training grounds and see what he can do, as there's already a tier 3 Nomu down there, which is the strongest Nomu they have. The Doctor walks in there with Deku, throws him in there and says, alright kid, that's your practice partner. Go full at him. As the Doctor walks in and he pushes a button with the microphone and says, alright kid, I'm going to activate that thing over there, and you're going to have a little sparring match with it. Alright? Deku looks over to the glass and nods his head and gets ready to fight as his hands turn into daggers. As the doctor says, "Alright, Nomu, spar with that kid right there. Do not kill him." As the Nomu gets ready and charges in at him. And they have a big fight. The fight lasts for about 2 hours, as the Nomu is standing up, and so is Deku. As one last jab from Deku, and the Nomu falls over. The abilities of the quirks were tiring it out too fast. As Deku opens his mouth, rips the leg off of the Nomu, and holds it in his mouth and just starts consuming it. The doctor asks, "Why are you eating the leg?" As Deku shrugs as he just continues to eat the leg. All for One was called into the watching room as he watches Deku eat a leg of a Nomu whole. As it just keeps regenerating on the Nomu, as Deku grabs onto the other leg and just drags it with him. All for One and the doctor are a little shocked to know that he can eat, and it's flesh. And those teeth are sharp too. All for One says that, well, we need to give him a new room. We need to give him a room anyways. So, why don't we get him a room near mine? As the doctor says, brilliant. And that Nomu will keep regenerating. So, no matter what, he has an endless supply of food. Well, if it actually helps him or not. All for One says, yes, well, let's just go now, shall we? As All for One and the doctor open the door to go and get Deku, but as soon as that happens, Deku opens his mouth up wide and just flares. Just essentially just scares off the doctor and All for One as they get close to him and the Nomu. And when that happens, I'm gonna say like a tail kind of grows out of Deku. And it's like a thin wired demon tail with just a little point at the end, like a little dagger. And it flares to him like a scorpion tail. He essentially just stung towards him like a scorpion stinger. It just went at him and almost stabbed into him. It can go longer or go shorter, so it was just hiding on his body this whole time. It can go near the speed of sound, so pretty fast, like a bullet, but not as loud. And it can either paralyze or it can kill instantly. So Deku stung it at him with the intent to kill. As All for One would reach his hand out, grabbing onto it and just yanking it off. Deku would screech in pain as the tail grew back even stronger. And the doctor asked, "Did you give him a adapting quirk as well?" All for One puts his hand to his head and says, I must have accidentally. As they look at Deku and his body hardens up with a steel-like complex. Not as shiny, but it has the toughness of steel. But it's still skin, so it's very flexible and light. As that just disappears, and they look at Deku and say, well, this is a very interesting creature you gave us. Oh my god. Well, that's how I'm going to end it. Part 0, what if Deku was an amalgamate? And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.